Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked down the busy street. The summer heat was unbearable, and his old sneakers were starting to fall apart. At 15 years old, he had learned to make the best of what he had. His mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and pay rent for their small apartment. Money was always tight, but Marcus never complained. He was heading home from his part-time job at the local grocery store when he heard a strange noise coming from the road ahead. A sleek black Mercedes had pulled over to the side, and an older white man was standing next to it looking frustrated and confused. The man was wearing an expensive suit and kept checking his gold watch nervously. Marcus slowed down and watched as the man kicked the flat tire in frustration. Other people walked by without stopping, some even crossing to the other side of the street to avoid any interaction. The man pulled out his phone and seemed to be making calls but kept shaking his head and hanging up. Something inside Marcus told him to help. His mother had always taught him to be kind to others, no matter who they were or what they looked like. She would say that helping someone in need was the right thing to do, even if you had nothing to gain from it. Marcus approached the man carefully, not wanting to startle him. The man looked up when he heard footsteps and seemed surprised to see a young black teenager walking toward him. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said politely. "I noticed you're having car trouble. Do you need help?" The man, whose name was Robert Wellington, was initially suspicious. He had been trying to reach his driver and mechanic for the past 20 minutes, but both were unavailable. His important business meeting was in less than 2 hours, and he was already running late. He had never been in a situation like this before, as he usually had people to handle such problems. "I have a flat tire," Robert said, gesturing toward the Mercedes. "I've never changed one before, and I can't reach anyone who can help me." Marcus smiled and walked over to examine the tire. He had helped his neighbor fix cars many times and had learned basic automotive skills from watching YouTube videos at the library. The tire was completely flat, but he could see the spare tire and tools in the trunk. "I can help you change it," Marcus offered. "It won't take too long." Robert was hesitant at first. He didn't know this young man, and he had always been taught to be careful about strangers. But something about Marcus seemed genuine and trustworthy. The boy's eyes were kind, and he spoke with respect and confidence. "Are you sure you know how to do this?" Robert asked. "Yes, sir, I've done it before. My neighbor taught me, and I've helped other people too," Marcus replied, already rolling up his sleeves. Robert agreed, and Marcus immediately got to work. He located the jack, lug wrench, and spare tire from the trunk. The tools were much nicer than any he had used before, but the process was the same. He positioned the jack under the car and began lifting it up. As Marcus worked, Robert watched, in amazement. The teenager moved with confidence and skill, explaining each step as he went along. Marcus loosened the lug nuts, removed the flat tire, and mounted the spare tire with ease. His hands were steady, and he worked efficiently despite the hot sun beating down on them. "Where did you learn to do this so well?" Robert asked, genuinely curious. "My neighbor, Mr. Johnson, has an old garage behind his house," Marcus explained, while tightening the lug nuts. "He lets me help him work on cars sometimes. He says it's good for young people to learn practical skills." Robert found himself impressed not just by Marcus's mechanical abilities, but by his attitude and maturity. The young man worked without complaint even though his clothes were getting dirty and he was sweating in the heat. He didn't ask for money or act like he expected anything in return. As Marcus finished up, Robert realized that this teenager had solved his problem when no one else could or would. All the expensive technology and contacts in his phone couldn't help him, but this young man with worn-out sneakers and a kind heart had saved his day. "What's your name, son?" Robert asked as Marcus lowered the car back down and packed up the tools. "Marcus Johnson, sir." "Well, not related to Mr. Johnson who taught me about cars. Just the same last name," Marcus said with a small laugh. "Well, Marcus Johnson, you've really helped me out today. I have an important meeting and I would have been in serious trouble without you." Marcus just shrugged and smiled. "Anyone would have done the same thing, sir. I'm just glad I could help." But Robert knew that wasn't true. Many people had walked by without offering assistance. This young man was different, and Robert found himself wanting to know more about him. "Can I give you some money for your help?" Robert asked, reaching for his wallet. Marcus shook his head. No, thank you, sir. I didn't help you for money. I just did what anyone should do. Robert was stunned. In his world, everything had a price and everyone wanted something in return for their services. Yet here was a teenager who had spent his time and energy helping a complete stranger and refused payment. At least let me give you a ride somewhere, Robert offered. It's the least I can do. Marcus looked at the expensive car and then at his own reflection in the shiny paint. He felt out of place, but Robert seemed sincere in his offer. I only live a few blocks away, sir. I can walk, but thank you. Please, I insist, it's too hot for you to walk after all the work you just did. Marcus finally agreed and got into the passenger seat of the Mercedes. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen, with leather seats and technology everywhere. He was careful not to touch anything and kept his hands folded in his lap. As they drove, Robert asked Marcus about his life, his family, and his dreams for the future. Marcus spoke honestly about his challenges but never complained or asked for sympathy. He talked about wanting to go to college someday and maybe become an engineer or mechanic. Robert listened carefully to every word, and by the time they reached Marcus's apartment building, he had made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Robert sat in his Mercedes outside Marcus's apartment building long after the young man had disappeared through the front door. The contrast between the luxury car and the rundown building was stark, but what really struck Robert was the memory of Marcus's genuine smile and selfless attitude. In his 62 years of life, Robert had met thousands of people through his business dealings, but few had left such an impression on him. The apartment building was old and showed signs of neglect. Paint was peeling from the walls and several windows were boarded up. Yet Marcus had walked into that building with dignity and pride, thanking Robert for the ride and wishing him well in his business meeting. Robert finally drove away, but he couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. He made it to his meeting, on time thanks to Marcus, and successfully closed a multi-million-dollar deal. But throughout the presentation, his mind kept wandering back to the teenager who had refused payment for his help. That evening, Robert sat in his mansion, surrounded by luxury that he had worked his entire life to achieve. He had expensive art on the walls, servants to attend to his every need, and more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. Yet he felt something was missing, and he couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's kindness. Robert had grown up poor himself, the son of a factory worker and a seamstress. He had worked his way through college, started his own business, and eventually built a real estate empire. Along the way, he had become focused solely on success and wealth, often forgetting the values his parents had taught him about helping others and giving back to the community. The next morning, Robert found himself driving back to Marcus's neighborhood. He told himself he was just curious, but deep down he knew he wanted to do something to help the young man who had helped him. He parked across the street from the apartment building and waited. Around 8 in the morning, Marcus emerged from the building wearing the same clothes from the day before. He was carrying a backpack and walking quickly, probably heading to school or work. Robert followed at a distance, wanting to learn more about the teenager's daily routine. Marcus walked 6 blocks to Jefferson High School, a public school that had seen better days. The building was old, and Robert could see that resources were limited. Students were entering through metal detectors and security guards were posted at every entrance. This was a world completely different from Robert's own experience at an elite private school. Robert spent the day making phone calls and doing research. He learned that Jefferson High School was underfunded and struggling. The graduation rate was low, and many students came from families facing economic hardship. College attendance rates were even lower, with most students going directly into the workforce after graduation. That afternoon, Robert waited near the school and watched as Marcus emerged with several other students. Instead of heading home, Marcus walked to a small grocery store where Robert saw him put on an apron and begin working. Through the window, Robert watched as Marcus stocked shelves, helped customers, and swept floors. The teenager worked with the same dedication and positive attitude he had shown while changing the tire. Robert went into the store and pretended to shop while observing Marcus interact with customers. The young man was polite and helpful to everyone, regardless of how they treated him. When an elderly woman struggled to reach something on a high shelf, Marcus immediately stopped what he was doing to help her. When a customer was rude and impatient, Marcus remained calm and professional. The store owner, an older Hispanic man named Mr. Rodriguez, clearly valued Marcus as an employee. Robert overheard him telling another worker that Marcus was the most reliable teenager he had ever hired, always showing up on time and never causing any trouble. After Marcus finished his shift, Robert watched him walk home. Instead of taking the most direct route, Marcus made a detour to visit an elderly neighbor, helping her carry groceries up 2 flights of stairs. He spent nearly 30 minutes with her, apparently just talking and keeping her company, before finally heading to his own apartment. Robert was amazed by what he had witnessed. This 15-year-old young man was working to help support his family, maintaining good grades in school, and still finding time to help others in his community. Marcus embodied the values that Robert had once held dear, but had somehow lost, along his path to success. That night, Robert made a decision. He was going to find a way to help Marcus, but he wanted to do it carefully and respectfully. He didn't want to embarrass the young man or make him feel like charity case. Robert understood, pride having grown up poor himself, and he knew that Marcus would likely refuse direct handouts. Robert began developing a plan. He would create opportunities for Marcus rather than simply giving him money. He would find ways to help that would allow Marcus to maintain his dignity while opening doors to a better future. The first step was education. Robert researched scholarship programs and found that Marcus would need to improve his standardized test scores and participate in more extracurricular activities to qualify for the best opportunities. Robert also learned that Marcus would need help with college application processes and guidance counseling, resources that were limited at Jefferson High School. Robert contacted his alma mater, Stanford University, and spoke with the admissions department about potential scholarship programs for deserving students from underprivileged backgrounds. He also reached out to several educational nonprofits that provided tutoring and mentoring services. But Robert wanted to do more than just help with college preparation. He began thinking about ways to provide Marcus with real-world experience and networking opportunities. Robert's company had internship programs, and he wondered if he could create a special position that would give Marcus valuable work experience while allowing him to continue his education. The more Robert thought about it, the more excited he became about the possibilities. He had the resources and connections to truly make a difference in Marcus's life, but he needed to approach the situation carefully. He didn't want Marcus to feel uncomfortable or suspicious about his motives. Robert decided that he would start small and build trust gradually. He would find natural ways to reconnect with Marcus and slowly introduce opportunities that would seem like normal parts of life rather than charity. 3 days after their first meeting, Robert drove to the grocery store where Marcus worked. He went inside and approached the counter where Marcus was working the register. "Marcus," Robert said with genuine surprise, as if the meeting was completely coincidental. "What a small world. I didn't know you worked here." Marcus looked up and immediately recognized Robert. His face lit up with a smile, and he seemed genuinely happy to see the older man. "Mr. Wellington, how are you? How did your meeting go the other day?" "It went perfectly, thanks to you," Robert replied. "I got there right on time and closed one of the biggest deals of my career. I owe it all to your help with that tire." As they talked, Robert noticed that other customers were beginning to line up behind him. He quickly made his purchases and stepped aside. But before leaving, he asked Marcus if he would like to have lunch sometime to talk about cars and mechanics. "I've been thinking about what you said about learning from your neighbor," Robert explained. "I'm actually interested in learning more about cars myself. Maybe you could teach me a few things." Marcus was surprised by the invitation, but pleased that someone like Robert would want to spend time with him. They agreed to meet the following Saturday at a small diner near Marcus's neighborhood. As Robert left the store, he felt a sense of purpose that he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long while, his wealth and success felt meaningful because he had found a way to use them to help someone who truly deserved it. Saturday morning arrived with the same sweltering heat that had marked the beginning of Marcus and Robert's unlikely friendship. Marcus arrived at the diner 15 minutes early, wearing his cleanest pair of jeans and a polo shirt his mother had bought him for church. He had spent the entire week wondering why a successful businessman like Robert would want to have lunch with him, but his mother had raised him to be gracious and to see the good in people. Robert arrived exactly on time, but instead of his expensive suit, he wore casual clothes that still probably cost more than Marcus's family spent on clothing in a year. Despite the difference in their attire, Robert's warm smile immediately put Marcus at ease. "Marcus, thank you for meeting me," Robert said as they sat down in a booth near the window. "I hope this place is okay. I wanted somewhere comfortable, where we could really talk." The diner was a local favorite, known for its generous portions and friendly service. Marcus had been there a few times with his mother for special occasions, and he appreciated that Robert had chosen somewhere in his neighborhood rather than an expensive restaurant where Marcus would have felt out of place. As they ordered their food, Robert asked Marcus about school, his job, and his interests. Marcus spoke enthusiastically about his classes, especially his math and science courses. He explained that he loved solving problems and understanding how things worked, which was part of why he enjoyed working on cars with Mr. Johnson. "You mentioned the other day that you might want to be an engineer someday," Robert said. "What kind of engineering interests you most?" Marcus's eyes lit up as he talked about mechanical engineering and automotive design. He had spent hours at the library reading about new technologies in electric vehicles and hybrid engines. He dreamed of someday working for a company that designed cars or maybe even starting his own automotive repair business. "The problem is, college is expensive," Marcus said quietly. "My mom works really hard, but we're just trying to pay rent and buy groceries. I know there are scholarships, but my counselor at school says the competition is really tough." Robert listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions about Marcus's grades, his career goals, and his family situation. He learned that Marcus maintained a 3.7 GPA despite working 20 hours a week at the grocery store. Marcus's mother, Janet, worked as a nurse's aide at a local hospital during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. His father had left when Marcus was 8 years old, and they hadn't heard from him since. "Your mother sounds like an amazing woman," Robert said. "It takes incredible strength to raise a child alone while working 2 jobs." "She's the strongest person I know," Marcus replied with obvious pride. "She always tells me that education is the key to a better life, and she makes sure I do my homework even when I'm tired from work. Sometimes I feel guilty that she's working so hard while I'm focused on school and my own dreams." Robert was moved by the teenager's maturity and the obvious love he had for his mother. He began to understand that any help he offered would need to benefit not just Marcus, but his mother as well. As they finished their lunch, Robert made what seemed like a casual suggestion. "You know, Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding cars and mechanics. I have a large garage at my house with several classic cars that I never drive. They probably need maintenance and tune-ups. Would you be interested in looking at them sometime? I could pay you for your time, and it might give you some hands-on experience with different types of vehicles." Marcus was immediately interested, but also cautious. "I wouldn't want to mess up your expensive cars, Mr. Wellington. I'm still learning and I might make mistakes." "That's exactly why I want you to work on them," Robert replied. "I'd rather have someone who's careful and eager to learn than someone who's overconfident. Besides, Mr. Johnson could come with you the first few times to supervise if that would make you more comfortable." They arranged for Marcus to visit Robert's house the following Saturday, bringing Mr. Johnson along to assess the vehicles and determine what work needed to be done. Robert gave Marcus his phone number and address, and they shook hands before parting ways. During the week that followed, Robert made several important phone calls. He contacted the principal of Jefferson High School and arranged to make an anonymous donation to establish a new scholarship fund for students pursuing engineering degrees. He also reached out to a private tutoring company and arranged for SAT preparation services to be offered free of charge to select students at the school. More importantly, Robert began researching Marcus's mother, Janet Johnson. He discovered that she had been trying to complete her nursing degree for several years, taking classes whenever she could afford them and fit them around her work schedule. She was only 12 credits away from graduation, but the cost of tuition and the time commitment required had made it impossible for her to finish. Robert also learned that Janet had been nominated for Employee of the Month multiple times at the hospital where she worked. Her supervisors praised her dedication, compassion, and reliability. Several patients had written letters thanking her for her kindness during difficult times. On Saturday morning, Marcus arrived at Robert's house with Mr. Johnson, and both were amazed by what they saw. The property was enormous, with a main house that looked like something from a magazine, and several outbuildings including a 4-car garage. The garage was immaculate and filled with classic automobiles that looked like they belonged in a museum. "This is incredible," Marcus whispered as he walked around a pristine 1967 Mustang Fastback. "These cars are beautiful." Mr. Johnson, who had been working on cars for over 40 years, was equally impressed. "Mr. Wellington, you have some real treasures here. This Mustang, that Camaro, and is that a 1963 Corvette split window? These are worth a fortune." Robert smiled as he watched Marcus and Mr. Johnson examine each vehicle with expert eyes. "I inherited most of them from my uncle, but I'm ashamed to say I never drive them. They just sit here collecting dust. I think they deserve to be properly maintained and appreciated." Mr. Johnson popped the hood of the Mustang and immediately began pointing out various components to Marcus. "See this carburetor? It needs adjustment, and these spark plug wires should probably be replaced. The engine is solid, but it needs some attention to run properly." For the next 3 hours, Marcus and Mr. Johnson worked together to assess each vehicle and create a maintenance plan. Robert watched from a distance, occasionally asking questions, but mostly just observing the passion and knowledge that both men brought to their work. As they wrapped up for the day, Robert made his proposal. "I'd like to hire both of you to restore these cars to perfect running condition. Marcus, you could work here on Saturdays and maybe one afternoon after school each week. Mr. Johnson, I'd appreciate your supervision and expertise. I'll pay you both fairly for your time, and Marcus, you'll gain experience working with some of the finest automobiles ever made." Marcus was thrilled by the opportunity, but he insisted that he wanted to earn the money through hard work rather than accept it as a gift. Robert assured him that the work would be challenging and that he would expect professional quality results. "There's one more thing," Robert added. "Marcus, I know you're interested in engineering. I have some connections at local colleges and universities. If you're interested, I might be able to arrange for you to visit some campuses and meet with admissions counselors. It never hurts to start planning early." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. Just 1 week ago, he had been walking home from work when he stopped to help a stranger with a flat tire. Now that same stranger was offering him opportunities that could change his entire future. As they shook hands and made plans for the following week, Robert felt a satisfaction that no business deal had ever provided. He was using his resources to create genuine opportunities for someone who deserved them, and he could already see the positive impact it was having on Marcus's confidence and outlook. The seeds of transformation had been planted, and both Marcus and Robert could sense that their lives were about to change in ways they never could have imagined. 3 months had passed since Marcus first started working on Robert's classic cars, and the transformation in both their lives was remarkable. Every Saturday morning, Marcus would arrive at Robert's estate with his toolbox and an eagerness to learn that impressed everyone around him. Under Mr. Johnson's careful guidance, he had successfully restored the 1967 Mustang to perfect running condition and was now working on the 1963 Corvette. The relationship between Marcus and Robert had evolved far beyond employer and employee. Robert found himself looking forward to their Saturday conversations almost as much as Marcus enjoyed learning about the cars. They would talk about everything from automotive engineering to life philosophy, and Robert was constantly amazed by the teenager's wisdom and maturity. Marcus had also begun visiting college campuses with Robert's help. They had toured the engineering departments at 3 different universities, and Marcus had met with professors who explained the various specializations available within mechanical engineering. Each visit had strengthened his determination to pursue higher education, but it had also made him more aware of the financial challenges ahead. On a particularly warm Saturday in November, Marcus was adjusting the carburetor on the Corvette when Robert approached with an envelope in his hand. His expression was serious, and Marcus could tell that something important was about to happen. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something," Robert said, setting down 2 bottles of water and taking a seat on a nearby workbench. "I've been doing some thinking about your future, and I have a proposition for you." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and gave Robert his full attention. Over the past few months, he had learned that when Robert spoke in that tone, he usually had something significant to discuss. "I've been impressed not just by your mechanical skills, but by your character, your work ethic, and your determination to succeed," Robert continued. "I've also gotten to know your mother a little bit through our conversations, and I have tremendous respect for the job she's done raising you." Marcus felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. He wondered where this conversation was leading and hoped it wasn't bad news. "I want to help you go to college, Marcus, but I want to do it in a way that maintains your dignity and gives you ownership of your success," Robert said, opening the envelope. "I've established a scholarship foundation, and you're going to be the first recipient." Marcus's eyes widened as Robert pulled out official-looking documents. The scholarship would cover full tuition, room and board, and books for 4 years at any accredited university. In addition, there would be a stipend for living expenses and a guaranteed paid internship each summer at one of Robert's companies. "Mr. Wellington, I don't know what to say," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "This is more than I ever dreamed possible." "There are conditions," Robert continued with a slight smile. "You have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, participate in community service, and mentor other young people who are facing similar challenges. The scholarship isn't just about your education. It's about creating a cycle of helping others." Marcus read through the documents carefully, hardly believing what he was seeing. The scholarship was worth more than $200,000 over 4 years, enough to attend even the most expensive engineering programs without worrying about debt. "But there's something else," Robert said, his voice becoming even more serious. "I've learned about your mother's situation, and I'd like to help her as well." Marcus looked up sharply. He had mentioned his mother's struggles with nursing school during some of their conversations, but he hadn't expected Robert to take any action. "I've arranged for your mother to receive a full scholarship to complete her nursing degree," Robert explained. "The program includes flexible scheduling around her work commitments, and there's financial assistance to help replace some of her income during the intensive study periods." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. He had always worried about his mother sacrificing her own dreams to support his education. The idea that they could both pursue their goals simultaneously seemed too good to be true. "Why are you doing all this for us?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Robert was quiet for a moment, looking out at the cars they had worked on together. "When I was young, someone helped me when I needed it most. A teacher saw potential in me and helped me get into college when my family couldn't afford it. I've been successful in business, but I never forgot that moment when someone believed in me enough to invest in my future." He turned back to Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "I've spent years accumulating wealth, but I've never felt as satisfied as I do when I see your excitement about learning something new, or when you talk about your dreams for the future. Helping you and your mother isn't charity. It's an investment in people who will make a difference in the world." Marcus stood up and walked around the garage, trying to process everything he had just heard. 6 months ago, his biggest concern was saving enough money to take the SAT exam. Now he was being offered opportunities that would change not just his life, but his mother's life as well. "I accept," Marcus said finally, extending his hand to Robert. "But I want you to know that I'll work harder than ever to prove that your faith in me is justified." As they shook hands, Robert felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had found a way to use his wealth to create genuine opportunities for deserving people, and he knew that Marcus would make the most of every chance he was given. That evening, Marcus rushed home to share the news with his mother. Janet was preparing for her night shift at the office building when Marcus burst through the door with the scholarship documents in his hand. "Mom, you need to sit down," Marcus said, his excitement barely contained. Something amazing has happened. As Marcus explained everything, the scholarship, the college opportunities, and especially the nursing program for his mother, Janet's emotions overwhelmed her. She had worked so hard for so long, always putting Marcus's needs before her own, that she had almost given up on her dream of becoming a registered nurse. "Baby, are you sure this is real?" she asked, reading through the nursing scholarship paperwork. "This Mr. Wellington really wants to help us both?" "He's been helping me for months, Mom, and he's never asked for anything in return except that I work hard and help other people when I can," Marcus explained. "He says that's how people helped him when he was young." Mother and son spent the evening planning their futures together. Janet would be able to reduce her hours at the office cleaning job and focus on completing her nursing degree. Marcus would apply to several top engineering programs, knowing that finances would no longer be a barrier to his dreams. As the weeks passed, both Marcus and Janet threw themselves into their studies with renewed energy. Marcus worked with a private tutor that Robert had arranged to help him prepare for the SAT exam. His scores improved dramatically, and his college applications became competitive for the best engineering programs in the country. Janet enrolled in the nursing program and discovered that she had a natural aptitude for the more advanced coursework. Her years of practical experience as a nurse's aide gave her insights that many of her younger classmates lacked, and she quickly became one of the top students in her class. Robert watched their progress with pride and continued to provide guidance and support whenever it was needed. He attended Marcus's high school graduation and was there when Janet received her acceptance letter to the accelerated nursing program. But perhaps the most significant moment came when Marcus was accepted to Stanford University's mechanical engineering program, the same university where Robert had earned his business degree decades earlier. "You're going to love Stanford," Robert told Marcus as they worked together on the final restoration project, a 1965 Shelby Cobra. "It's where I learned not just about business, but about the importance of using success to help others." As Marcus prepared for college, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that hot summer day when he decided to help a stranger with a flat tire. He had learned that small acts of kindness could lead to life-changing opportunities, and he was determined to pass that lesson on to others. The foundation of their relationship, built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's well-being, had created something much more valuable than a simple business transaction. It had created a bond that would last a lifetime and a commitment to helping others that would extend far beyond their own personal success. 2 years had passed since Marcus began his studies at Stanford University, and the young man who had once worried about affording college textbooks was now thriving in one of the nation's most prestigious engineering programs. He had maintained a 3.8 GPA, while actively participating in several student organizations and volunteering with local high school students who faced challenges similar to his own background. Marcus had grown more confident and articulate, but he had never lost the humility and kindness that had first impressed Robert. Every few weeks he would call Robert to update him on his progress and to seek advice about various opportunities and decisions. Their relationship had evolved into something resembling a father-son bond, filling a void that had existed in both of their lives. Robert had continued to expand his scholarship foundation, and Marcus had become the program's unofficial ambassador. He would return to Jefferson High School during school breaks to speak with students about college opportunities and to encourage them to pursue their dreams despite financial obstacles. His story had become legendary in the neighborhood, inspiring other young people to believe that their circumstances didn't have to define their futures. Meanwhile, Janet had successfully completed her nursing degree and had been promoted to a supervisory position at the hospital. She was earning more money than she had ever imagined possible, and for the first time in years she wasn't working 2 jobs. The extra time allowed her to focus on her own health and well-being, and she had even begun taking evening classes in hospital administration. During Marcus's spring break in his sophomore year, Robert invited him to accompany him on a business trip to Detroit, where Robert's company was considering investing in a new automotive technology startup. The trip would give Marcus exposure to the business side of the automotive industry and allow him to see how engineering innovations were translated into commercial opportunities. The startup, called EcoMotion, was developing revolutionary battery technology for electric vehicles. The young engineers who had founded the company reminded Robert of Marcus, brilliant, determined, and passionate about using technology to solve real-world problems. As they toured the facility and met with the research team, Marcus was fascinated by the cutting-edge work being done. "This is exactly the kind of work I want to do after graduation," Marcus told Robert as they drove back to their hotel. "I want to be part of the solution to environmental challenges, and I want to help make sustainable transportation accessible to everyone." Robert had been thinking along similar lines. Over the past 2 years, he had been considering how to expand his business interests to include more socially responsible investments. The success of his mentorship with Marcus had reminded him of the satisfaction that came from supporting meaningful causes. "Marcus, I have an idea I'd like you to consider," Robert said as they sat in the hotel restaurant that evening. "I'm thinking about starting a new division of my company focused on sustainable technology investments. I need someone who understands both the technical aspects and the social impact potential of these innovations." Marcus looked intrigued but uncertain. "What kind of role are you thinking about?" "I want you to join my company after graduation as the Director of Sustainable Technology Development," Robert explained. "You would identify promising startups, evaluate their technical feasibility, and help me make investment decisions. It would combine your engineering background with business experience, and it would allow you to have a real impact on the development of environmentally friendly technologies." The offer was generous beyond anything Marcus had expected. The starting salary was higher than most engineering positions, and there would be opportunities for equity participation in the investments they made. More importantly, the role would allow Marcus to pursue his passion for sustainable technology while learning about business and entrepreneurship. "I'm honored by the offer, Mr. Wellington," Marcus said carefully, "but I want to make sure I'm truly qualified for this kind of responsibility. I don't want you to give me opportunities just because of our relationship." Robert appreciated Marcus's concern about earning his position on merit. "Marcus, I've watched you grow and develop over the past 2 years. Your professors at Stanford have told me about your exceptional work in advanced materials and sustainable energy systems. Your technical skills are outstanding, but more importantly, you have the vision and integrity needed to evaluate opportunities that can make a real difference in the world." He paused to let his words sink in before continuing. "This isn't charity or favoritism. I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands both the technical and social implications of the investments we make. You're the best person I know for this job, and frankly, I believe you'll be more successful in this role than in a traditional engineering position." Marcus spent the rest of the trip thinking about Robert's offer. He had always assumed he would work for a large corporation or maybe start his own engineering firm someday. The opportunity to shape investment decisions and help emerging companies develop sustainable technologies was exciting, but it also felt like a huge responsibility. When they returned from Detroit, Marcus discussed the opportunity with his mother, his professors, and Mr. Johnson, who had become like a grandfather figure to him. Everyone agreed that the position would be a perfect fit for Marcus's skills and interests, and they encouraged him to accept Robert's offer. During his junior year, at Stanford, Marcus began working part-time with Robert's investment team to gain experience in evaluating business opportunities. He learned to read financial statements, assess market potential, and analyze competitive landscapes. His engineering background gave him unique insights into the technical feasibility of various innovations, and his recommendations proved to be remarkably accurate. The first major investment they made together was in EcoMotion, the battery technology company they had visited in Detroit. Marcus had identified several key advantages in their approach to battery chemistry, and he convinced Robert that the investment had enormous potential. Within 18 months, the company had secured contracts with 2 major automotive manufacturers, and their initial investment had tripled in value. Word of Marcus's success began to spread throughout the venture capital and technology communities. Several major firms tried to recruit him, offering signing bonuses and salaries that exceeded what Robert was paying. But Marcus had no interest in leaving. He was learning more from Robert than he could anywhere else, and he was having a direct impact on the development of technologies that could help solve environmental problems. By his senior year, Marcus had become Robert's full partner in making sustainable technology investments. They had built a portfolio of 12 companies working on everything from solar panel efficiency to carbon capture systems. Marcus had developed a reputation as one of the most insightful young investors in the clean technology sector. More importantly, Marcus had begun implementing his own version of Robert's mentoring philosophy. He started a program at Stanford to connect engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds with internship opportunities at their portfolio companies. He also established a fund to provide financial support for students who couldn't afford to take unpaid internships. Robert watched with pride as Marcus developed into a leader who used his success to create opportunities for others. The young man who had once helped a stranger with a flat tire was now helping dozens of other students achieve their own dreams of careers in technology and engineering. As graduation approached, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. He had not only achieved his dream of earning an engineering degree from one of the world's best universities, but he had also discovered a career path that combined his technical interests with his desire to make a positive impact on society. The scholarship foundation that Robert had created in Marcus's honor had now helped over 50 students attend college, and Janet had been promoted again to become the director of nursing education at her hospital. The ripple effects of that chance encounter on a hot summer day continued to spread throughout their community and beyond. But perhaps the most significant transformation had occurred in Robert himself. His relationship with Marcus had reminded him of the values and priorities that had guided him in his youth. He had found a sense of purpose that went far beyond financial success, and he had discovered that the most rewarding investments were those made in people rather than just companies. As Marcus prepared to walk across the stage at Stanford's graduation ceremony, both he and Robert knew that this milestone was not an ending, but rather the beginning of an even more exciting chapter in their partnership. They had proven that when talent meets opportunity, and when success is used to create more opportunities for others, the results can transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. The foundation they had built together, based on mutual respect, shared values, and a commitment to helping others, was now strong enough to support dreams and ambitions that neither of them had ever imagined possible. And it all began with a simple act of kindness on a roadside, proving that the smallest gestures can sometimes lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. 5 years after graduating from Stanford, Marcus stood in the boardroom of Wellington Sustainable Technologies, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 27 years old, he had become one of the youngest, successful venture capitalists in the clean technology sector, but more importantly, he had never forgotten the values that had brought him to this moment. The company he and Robert had built together now managed over $200 million in investments, focusing exclusively on technologies that could help address climate change and environmental challenges. Their portfolio included companies developing everything from advanced solar panels to revolutionary water purification systems, and several of their investments had gone public with tremendous success. But financial returns were only part of the story. Marcus had insisted that every company they invested in commit to hiring and mentoring students from underserved communities. Their portfolio companies had created over 3,000 jobs, many of them filled by young people who, like Marcus, had needed someone to believe in their potential. The scholarship foundation that had started with Marcus's education had grown into a national program. The Wellington Johnson Foundation now provided full college scholarships to over 500 students each year, focusing on young people who demonstrated both academic potential and a commitment to using their education to help others. Marcus's mother, Janet, had become the foundation's director of community outreach, using her background in nursing and her understanding of community needs to identify deserving students. She traveled across the country, visiting high schools in underserved communities and encouraging students to pursue higher education, despite financial obstacles. On this particular morning, Marcus was preparing for a special board meeting. Robert, now 72 years old, had decided it was time to officially retire and turn full control of the company over to Marcus. It was a transition they had been planning for 2 years, but it still felt momentous to both of them. "Are you ready for this?" Robert asked as he entered the boardroom, carrying a leather portfolio that Marcus recognized as the same one Robert had brought to their first lunch meeting 7 years earlier. "I think so," Marcus replied with a smile. "Though I have to admit, it's a little scary to think about running this company without your daily guidance." Robert laughed and took his seat at the conference table. "Marcus, you've been running this company for the past 2 years. I've just been here to offer advice when you needed it. You've already proven that you can make smart investment decisions, build strong relationships, and stay true to our mission of using business success to create positive social impact." As the other board members arrived, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that first day when he helped Robert with his flat tire. The shy teenager who had worked at a grocery store to help support his family had become a confident leader who was responsible for millions of dollars in investments and hundreds of employees. But some things had remained constant. Marcus, still, lived modestly, driving a reliable hybrid car instead of the luxury vehicles his wealth could afford. He still volunteered regularly at Jefferson High School, mentoring students who reminded him of his younger self. And he still called Mr. Johnson every Sunday to discuss cars and life, maintaining the relationship with the man who had first taught him the value of hard work and practical skills. The board meeting proceeded smoothly, with unanimous approval of Marcus's promotion to CEO and chairman of Wellington Sustainable Technologies. Robert would remain as chairman emeritus and would continue to provide strategic advice, but the daily operations and investment decisions would now be entirely Marcus's responsibility. After the meeting concluded, and the other board members had left, Marcus and Robert sat alone in the boardroom sharing a moment of quiet reflection. "I have something for you," Robert said, opening the leather portfolio and removing a document. "This is the original scholarship agreement we signed 7 years ago. I've had it framed as a reminder of where we started." Marcus accepted the framed document with obvious emotion. The scholarship that had changed his life seemed so modest compared to the foundation they had built together, but it represented the beginning of everything that had followed. "There's something else," Robert continued, pulling out a second document. "I'm donating my remaining shares in the company to the Wellington Johnson Foundation. This means that all future profits from our investments will go directly to scholarships and community programs." Marcus was stunned by the gesture. Robert was essentially giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to ensure that their work would continue indefinitely. "Mr. Wellington, Robert, I don't know what to say," Marcus stammered. "This is incredible." "It's what should have happened all along," Robert replied. "This company exists because you stopped to help a stranger and because you've never forgotten that success means nothing if it's not used to help others. Now the company will continue that mission long after both of us are gone." That evening, Marcus drove to his old neighborhood to visit his mother and Mr. Johnson. He wanted to share the news of his promotion and Robert's donation, but more importantly, he wanted to spend time with the people who had shaped his character and values. The neighborhood had changed dramatically over the past few years. Several new businesses had opened, many of them started by graduates of the Wellington Johnson Scholarship Program who had returned to invest in their community. The apartment building where Marcus had grown up with his mother had been renovated and converted into affordable housing for working families. Jefferson High School had been completely transformed, with new science laboratories, updated technology, and expanded college counseling services. The graduation rate had increased from 45% to 83%, and over 60% of graduates now went on to higher education. As Marcus sat in Mr. Johnson's garage, watching the older man work on a classic Mustang similar to the first car they had restored together at Robert's house, he marveled at the chain of events that had brought them all to this point. "Mr. Johnson, do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't stopped to help Mr. Wellington that day?" Marcus asked. The older man looked up from the engine and smiled. Son, I think you would have found another way to succeed. You've got character, and character always finds a way to shine through. Helping Robert just gave you the opportunity to show what you were already made of. Marcus nodded, understanding that his success wasn't really about the scholarship or the business opportunities. It was about the values his mother and Mr. Johnson had instilled in him, and about his decision to use those values to guide his choices, even when it would have been easier to think only of himself. Later that night, as Marcus prepared for bed, in his modest apartment he received a text message from a high school student in Detroit whom he had been mentoring. The young woman had just been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship from the Wellington Johnson Foundation, and she wanted to thank Marcus for encouraging her to pursue her dreams of studying environmental engineering. Marcus smiled as he read the message, remembering the excitement he had felt when he received his own acceptance letter from Stanford. The cycle was continuing, and somewhere in the country another young person was getting the opportunity to transform their life, and then use that transformation to help others. As he turned off the lights, Marcus thought about Robert's words from earlier that day about success meaning nothing if it wasn't used to help others. He had learned that the most valuable investments weren't measured in dollars or returns, but in the lives that were changed and the dreams that were made possible. The young man who had once helped a stranger with a flat tire had become someone who helped strangers achieve their dreams every day. And in doing so, he had discovered that the greatest success comes not from what you achieve for yourself, but from what you make possible for others.